So Cincinnati this weekend travels to Oklahoma State's team you're familiar with. Your Kansas State Wildcats have already played them this year. Just overall thoughts on that Cincinnati Oklahoma State game based on what you've seen from both teams.
Well, to start off, I hope it goes better for you guys than it did for us. I mean, that was a tough 180 for the Wildcats, to say the least. We started off, and I think in that week we were favored by 5.5, 6 points. I forget off the top of my head, but then Oklahoma State comes out and absolutely smacks us in the mouth. And granted, this is the sucky part. Before I'll get into the actual specifics of what's going to happen, is going to Stillwater at 7 p.m. absolutely stinks. I mean, it's a heck of a venue. It's a great event to be a part of, but when you're the visiting team, that's a scary environment at that point. I mean, you have dudes that are 5 feet from you banging these giant, wooden slamming baseball bats basically against the side of the stands. Like, your coach can't hear your offensive coordinator, your quarterback can't hear people. So there's already that degree of difficulty. But I don't know. I mean, I wrote about it today on our website, and I talked about this game as a preview. Oklahoma State right now has, a four-headed monster in the backfield, all in Ollie Gordon. I mean, that dude is running through anybody he can find. Almost 300 yards rushing this past week. So that's going to be, stopping him is going to be priority number one, which if you can figure out that recipe, tell the rest of the Big 12, because somebody will have to do it this season. But I talked about it today. I mean, that's going to be Cincinnati's game plan, is you have to stop Ollie Gordon. And that's where you're going to have a shot in a certain sense, because you're going to have Alan Bowman make plays down the field, which I know Cincinnati's secondary has kind of been hit or miss this year, but there is a way and a game plan that Cincinnati could surprise people and get that first win. But then you look at the other side of the ball and you look at Cincinnati's offense, and it hasn't been consistent this year.
Mm-hmm.
You saw it against Baylor this past week where there's a flash and guys played for each other, which I think is a really great thing. But it's a lot of what ifs about this Cincinnati Oklahoma State game. And it's a little bit easier for me to take the proven team immediately. But there is a way that this team could band together in that sense. I mean, there's a lot of momentum rolling over. So I think that's at least a good thing to have, even though a loss happened. I mean, I'm a big moral victories guy. I know that's kind of a lame thing to say, but there's something there for Cincinnati if they can piece it together.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing with Cincinnati, you look at the stats, and Mike Gundy said it best. You look at their record, 2-5. You turn on the film, they do not look like a team that is 2-5. Sixth best offense in the league, third best defense. They've outgained 6 of their 7 opponents, which obviously the only thing that matters is points. They've had multiple games where they have 2 100-yard rushers. It's kind of mind-boggling, though, where you wouldn't think that when you take the stats into account, this is a 2-5 team. On the flip side, you look at Oklahoma State, 10th best offense in the league at 404 yards per game. Second to last in defense at 405 yards per game. But yet, they're one of the top 3 teams in the league right now. And I think Mike Gundy said it best. The reason that they've made this transition, what was it? They lost to Arkansas State or South Alabama earlier in the year, 33-7. Yeah, they lose at South Alabama 33-7, and they rip off 3 straight wins with 2 of the hotter teams in the league, Kansas State and West Virginia. And he said one of the biggest reasons for that in his presser this week was they got away from trying to do multiple things and just focused on what they're good at, which is running the ball. 4 offensive linemen are seniors, so a lot of experience up front. You got Ollie Gordon, second in the Big 12 in yards per game at 117 yards, 8 touchdowns, 7 yards per carry. I mean, he's, like you said, he's a horse back there. Mike Gundy in his press conference was saying he talked to his brother. And his brother said, look, you need to clear out 2 rows, let that horse lay down and sleep, and put some hay next to him and just keep feeding him. Mike Gundy's response, as always, that you're always going to get a one-liner, is go back to having a drink. I'll get back to you later tonight.
Oh, man. Classic Gundy, man. I mean, he's right. That's the other thing. Ollie Gordon has been that team, and I think that, the KISS method is widely accepted at this point. Keep it simple, stupid. This is exactly that. I mean, that's the case. But, if you can figure out a way to slow Ollie Gordon down, which is the biggest if, that's not, an easy iceberg to deal with. But I think with that team, you said it, the stats do not agree that they're a 5-2 team. And that happens in college sports, but they have one of the, I don't even know how to describe it. There's an aura with this team that it's getting teams, it's affecting people. And I think with Kansas State, you saw us, I don't think that was nearly the best version of Kansas State you saw. Obviously, Will Howard goes out there and throws 3 picks and has had a really slow start, but You go back to that game, they did a lot of good things in terms of Oklahoma State. Like defensively, they're a solid group, even though the stats don't line up. They've been solid in the red zone, but they've kind of gotten a stretch where they've figured out their brand of football. And I think it's a situation where they have so much momentum right now. And I don't see Mike Gundy handing that over very easily. But the second that momentum is stripped, that's where you're going to learn something about this team. It's just, they're playing you guys, then they play Oklahoma in that, in Bedlam, in the last Bedlam game.
Definitely.
So
Yeah.
you could get him in a look ahead moment. I don't think that Mike Gundy is much of a look ahead type guy, but there's some possibility there. But it is going to be a task for sure.
Defensively, they run a three-man front similar to what Iowa State rolled out. What impressed you the most about Oklahoma State defensively?
There was a kid, man, Cameron Epps. It's a safety freshman, a true freshman safety. He could be, because he could be a redshirt freshman, but I'm pretty sure he's a true freshman kid. Had 2 picks, just flies around the field, floats around the ball at all times. They've got some good push in the pocket. You got a guy like Colin Oliver's out there and makes plays, but I think Cameron Epps is the guy to watch out for. He had 2 picks against Kansas State, had his first career pick 6 in that game, and he's just a ball hawk all around. The guy's contributed defending the run. He's contributed in the passing game. It's a dangerous spot when you have a quarterback that's like that wants to force the ball down the field to an extent, which really bit Kansas State in that sense, because this kid is he's jumping routes, he's floating around the football, and that is a dangerous sign. But they're gettable for sure. But they have that same, strong Mike Gundy bend don't break mentality that is so, it's so iconic with him alongside. So you have to deal with that. But I think Cameron Epps is definitely the guy to watch for. He is an absolute problem for sure.
So when Cincinnati ran the 3-3-5 under Marcus Freeman and then Mike Tressel, the biggest weakness for that defense, as good as they were, was run defense. Is this an Oklahoma State defense that, with Cincinnati and having multiple guys that can run the ball extremely well? Is this the game where you think maybe they should rely more on the run than letting Emory throw the ball?
Yeah, it has to be. And it's not about Emory in this case. I don't want to dunk on the guy or anything like that, but
Right.
when you do have a quarterback that's still getting his feet under him, figuring things out in the league, trust your run game, but especially in this game. I mean, Corey Conner's been a stud this year. He's got, he's averaging 5.5, 6 yards a carry off the top of my head. The guy is a stud back there. And I think you see him make plays in the passing game as well as the run game, but there's going to be moments to get him involved on screen passes and just get him out wide. But if you can establish a run game, that's going to put a ton of pressure on Mike Gundy. Because if it gets to a game where it's it's a West Virginia style game where you can kind of drag them down a bit, play ugly, win a tough game. Like Scott Satterfield's shown that in the past at different stops where he has the ability to win ugly. And I know that ugly might not be the best word to say, but if you can establish a run game there, get some guys in the backfield going, get Emory Jones involved in that as well. Like there is definitely an element because in the Kansas State game, the most successful thing for us was actually the quarterback run. So that's it bodes well. Will Howard, I think, was the leading rusher in that game with 100 and something yards. There's definitely an element of the middle of the field's got some openings in it for sure. So if you can get the right running back core in and Emory Jones involved in that, I think there's definitely some element. And then you take some of the clock too. So that's also a big thing. Don't let their offense drag you down for 12 minutes at a time down the field. So it switches things up a little bit.
You kind of hit on it earlier, but what are some of the biggest challenges of playing at Oklahoma State, especially in an environment where it's a night game? It's homecoming. Scott Satterfield mentioned everyone's going to be feeling good. So what are
Yeah.
some of the challenges of playing in that environment at night?
Well, you'll definitely talk about the fans first because that is the element. I mean, these guys have been, they've been in the parking lot drinking since 9 a.m. Doesn't matter if this is a 7 p.m. game. These dudes are ready to roll. So you got to deal with the screaming fans element, but the proximity is one thing that gets talked about a lot. And I don't want to just keep hammering that, but it is really like from me to this couch is how close the fans are. If I'm, on the football field, it is so close. So you have to adjust to a whole different level of communication because that's where it's tested. And if you are a team that's had any issues with miscommunicating, it's going to show again in Stillwater for sure.
Mhm.
But the fan base, like they know how much of an asset they are to the game. That is the toughest part I've ever seen is when fans know they can control the game or put an emphasis on the game. That's where it gets dangerous because your offense goes out there and it's the loudest the stadium's going to be the entire time. And you can make the argument that most fan bases know that, but there's something about Stillwater where they know, okay, hey, if our defense is going to get off the field here, I have to be screaming my voice out. I cannot have a voice on Monday if this football team's going to win. So they take it personal with every game for sure. So I think that's probably the biggest adjustment, as well as just, Mike Gundy established that place, like, and not established the place, but like They revamped. I mean, I think it's Boone's Pickens Stadium off the top of my head. Um, it's really taken a step forward in terms of Big 12 home environments just in the last decade. So it's definitely a cool place to be. Are you going to be on? I know it's kind of a trip. Are you on hand for that game or are you watching?
So up in there, I'd love to go just to experience the venue more than
Mhm.
anything. Is it worth it? Like, what's the drive like up there?
Stillwater. I mean, from Manhattan is usually where I was living from, so the middle of Kansas. I think it felt like it's about 3 hours, 4 hours from Manhattan. So I assume Kansas City is probably closer to the 5 range. Could be wrong in that front. I would bet 4 or 5 is probably what you're looking at, which is still a hike.
Is the venue worth it? To go experience a night game there.
Dude, I think it is. I think it is absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, there's the entire thing about Nip at Night. They've got a lot of great things in that with Cincinnati. This is a place that it's rocking. I mean, it's absolutely rocking, especially when they have a team that's capable of winning out and getting to a Big 12 title game. Will it happen? I'm not sure. I know that Oklahoma is a huge task, but it's going to be peak form Stillwater. So if you can get down there, it's definitely worth it. There's some cool restaurants to check out as well. And there's all kinds of people on Twitter that'll chime in and give you the exact, bar hopping scenario of where you're heading
right.
from. So